Hello guys, I'm going to go over here what I recommend on a pre-purchase inspection of a Ford Focus 2012 through 2018 specifically. Go over common issues to look out for. First thing I'm going to do here is just walk around, get a general idea of any body damage. If there's a lot of dings, dents, and damage, you can negotiate the price if it's not already fair enough for the condition. Go down here, make sure it's got some meat on the tires, reach all the way in, make sure there's no inner edge wear on the tires. If it feels bald on the inside or if there's metal hanging out, then it'll need tires too. Glance in here, inspect the thickness of the brake pad. Can't get a good view of it there, but there should be some brake pad left in there. If you're not sure how to inspect brake pads, you can look that up. It's got a little scratch right here. This one is high mileage. Little bit of rust possibly hidden underneath here. Just be cautious of that. Yeah, there may be a reason those are there. It might be covering some rust, so be careful. That is a cab corner. That's a known rust issue in general on vehicles. Focuses this year model generally don't have major rust issues, at least down here in Virginia on the edge of the rust belt. I haven't seen many. There is a lot of miles on this one, about 230,000, so anything's possible. Just a general look over. Overall, I'd say it's in excellent condition for how many miles are on it. Once again, just make sure the tires are in reasonable condition. At this point, you can crawl underneath the front and back and just look around, inspect for any major rust. Apologies for the angle here, but one moment. Okay. As you can see here, the subframe, which is the, you see that blackness right here? That's the control arm, that tan thing, but that's the subframe, the black right here. If it's brown and flaky and falling apart, then run away. Don't buy the car. A little bit of brownness is acceptable, but if it's falling apart and has holes in it, that means there's holes in the subframe, and it probably has rust issues elsewhere also. Looking under the back here, once again, this is the back of the car. Inspect the lower control arms here for rust. That's a good general indication of the health of the rest of the frame back here, because this is one of the hardest hit areas. This is the back control arms here. If that's very rusty and flaking apart, then likely elsewhere there's going to be a lot of rust also. But this overall gives me a good feel for it. As you can also see that there's no edge wear on the tires back here. So I don't think there's an alignment issue either. If there's edge wear on the tires, then we'll need an alignment done. So overall, I have a great feel for this car already. Great feeling for it. As far as overall condition and rust, a common failure is the horn. Okay, this horn works. Keyless entry works. This seat here is in excellent condition for as many miles that's on it. My personal Focus, I'm not buying this car, by the way, if you're wondering. My personal Focus has almost half the miles and it's worn into the seat here, so somebody cared for this car. That's good. Or it could be that it's just a lot of highway miles, which is actually very good. So apologies for the lighting here. I'm going to go ahead and start the engine and get this pulled out of this sunlight, but I want to show you starting the engine. Make sure it starts on the first try. Sounds strong and healthy. The battery sounds strong. I hear a lot of vibration. The engine mount's probably worn, which is common on these. Let me show you. That's how you open the hood. You pull that lever right there after you release it under the dash. Common failures here. Just look for any obvious major oil leakage from the valve cover gasket. That's a cheap, easy fix. But look here, the coolant level's low. A common failure point is for the degas bottle to develop a crack right under here. I don't feel a crack, so another common leak point would be the water pump. At this point, I would just top the coolant off and run it and make sure there's no drips underneath. I'm going to go into more detail over that later. That's the engine mount right there. On the back of the engine mount, there are two ribs. You're going to want to look at the bottom of the engine mount and see if it's contacting the bracket on the bottom. But if you hear vibrations, that's most likely the issue there. That's a $20 mount that you can put on yourself. I don't feel any leaks from the degas bottle when I check it, so it may just need to be topped off. It may not have been topped off in a while. I don't see any obvious leaks from the water pump or anything. You would see some dampness around here, up here where it slung the coolant. Overall, I get a great feeling about this car. Pull the battery cover off. It does have a fairly reasonably new battery. It's not super old. It looks good. Sometimes the battery cables get hard and full of corrosion. These are flexible. That's also good. Alright, on the 2012 model Focuses, you'll have this little tank right here on the purge valve line. That means it's the original purge valve, and it'll probably need to be replaced soon, but it's a $50 part. It's not a big deal, and it's easy to replace. That'll set a check engine light and possibly cause it to run lean, but this one seems to be running fine right now. Okay. Another common issue is the headlights like to haze over and will need to be replaced. This is just frost. These headlights are in excellent condition. All right, let's get in the car and drive it. There's no check engine light, no transmission fault light. It has a tire pressure monitor fault, which could just be a sensor. Okay. Overall, looks good here. Okay, I just put the car in reverse and it engages. I hear a lot of vibration from that engine mount. If you feel a lot of vibrations inside, or you hear a rattling in the right front, it needs an engine mount. Not a big deal. Okay, put it in drive now. Make sure it engages properly. Yeah, I don't feel anything abnormal with the transmission from a stop here. You can hear the vibrations from the engine mount. Okay, I have some water on the windshield, so I'm going to go ahead and clean that off. Hold the washers down. Make sure those work. Make sure the wiper blades don't streak. Not a big deal there. Okay, I don't feel any clutch shudder. I don't feel any transmission slippage or missing gears. I'm going to keep driving it though. I feel a very slight hesitation going into second gear when it's cold. That's pretty much normal on these. It's not going to affect anything. If you feel a lot of jerkiness and shudder, especially after it's warmed up from a stop, that could be a clutch issue in the transmission. That's not the end of the world. You can drive it hard a few times and mitigate shudder for a while. A permanent fix would be replacing the clutch and forks. Okay, I'm driving it. I'm letting it go through all the gears. Listen for roaring sounds, like a wheel bearing noise, and also a roaring type noise you may hear in certain gears. Pay attention for that. That could be an output shaft bearing making noise if there's that. But I don't hear anything obvious, and it would be obvious for you. Believe me, you would hear a loud roaring type sound and you would know something's wrong. Clutch feels good. This is the dual clutch transmission, automatic. And they are issue prone. However, I have a lot of videos to help with diagnosing and fixing them. I've got the heat turned on, and it does feel warm coming out of the vents. Do an acceleration on the highway here. No missing gears, no skipping or shuddering from the transmission. This appears to be a good, well-maintained car. And if you have the heat turned on and you don't feel heat coming out, that can indicate an issue with a coolant leak. Common sources of a coolant leak on these are the heater hoses where they connect at the firewall. The O-rings like to leak there. The degas bottle, the coolant bottle, likes to develop cracks where I showed you. And the water pump likes to drip and cause a leak. Now get air in the system and prevent heat from coming out of the vents. Another common failure point, you try to turn the radio on, and if it doesn't turn on, it needs a new radio. Not a big deal. Once again, I'm just going to do a hard acceleration, load test everything. If you start seeing the check engine light flash and you feel sluggishness under hard acceleration, then you may need a tune-up, which is not a very common fault on these. Normally the ignition coils last a long time. Obviously could indicate an issue with an injector sticking or something like that too, but once again, normally there's no issues with coils or injectors on these, but that's just something good to do, hard acceleration, that'll test for misfires. Steady cruise, I don't hear any roaring, any abnormal sounds other than vibrations from the engine mount, and don't be afraid of a worn engine mount. I would say 100% of Focuses will need the engine mount replaced at some point, and it's a cheap and easy repair you can do yourself. It's about $15 for an engine mount insert, and I have a video on how to replace it. That alert there that said my key active, watch speed, or whatever it said, if you have a second key, you can disable that. You just need to go in and reset all of them to admin keys. If you only have one key, then you'll need another one cut to get rid of that message there. If you have select shift, you see that S right there? That is select shift. You can choose what gear the car's in. Try that out. Go through the gears a little bit. If it does not let you use select shift, then there could be a detected issue with the transmission. That's a good way to figure that out there. If you put it in select shift and it doesn't light up on there and it doesn't let you select gears, then there could be a detected issue once again with the transmission. If you suspect that the seller has cleared a check engine light, after you drive it for 10 or 15 minutes, stop somewhere, turn it off, unbuckle your seatbelt and open the door, and then restart the engine and start driving it again. That'll begin a second drive cycle. And if there's a recently cleared check engine light, that'll cause it to come back on. Sometimes it takes 2 drive cycles to do that, so that's another good thing to do. Okay, at the moment I'm going 60 miles an hour. I'm about to take an exit, and what I'm going to do here is gradually go into the brake pedal, and I'm not going to slam the brakes on. I just want to feel for any pedal pulsation. If you feel the car shaking while you're braking, then you are probably going to need to replace the pads and rotors, because the rotors may be warped. Here we go. Feels great. And also, when I'm slowing down, I'm paying attention to make sure the transmission's downshifting properly and not grinding or missing gears or shaking. I'm accelerating up here. So far, everything feels great with the car. Also, the heat feels pretty good as well. Unless it's really cold like it is here, 32 degrees, you can try out the air conditioning too, make sure that works well. But if it's freezing cold outside, you're not going to be able to test the air conditioning. And if you are looking at one with the dual clutch power shift transmission, I would definitely consider going at least on a 20-minute drive, some highway driving, some 30 to 45 mile an hour driving, and stop and go. Get everything nice and warmed up, test the transmission out, slow down to a stop, accelerate to 50 miles an hour, make sure there's no transmission grinds, missing gears. It'll be obvious. And also severe shakiness from a stop would be an issue as well. And if you have warning lights for the transmission come on or transmission overheat, obviously that's an issue. Just use common sense, okay? And also, if you have a check engine light, you might as well bring a little scanner with you just to see what code is in it. But I venture to say 3 out of 4, or maybe even more, Focuses with over 100,000 miles is going to have a code P0420 for the catalytic converter efficiency. Don't be too alarmed by that. Pretty much every Focus is going to have that, unless the converter's been replaced already. Which, if it has, that's a very big plus, because those are expensive. Just make sure it was, ask them if they had it replaced, and if it was an OEM converter or not. A lot of the aftermarket ones don't last very long before setting a P0420 code again. And apologies if you are not familiar with a lot of this mechanical talking here. If you have any doubt in yourself about this, you can always bring it to a mechanic and have them do a pre-purchase inspection. I'm slowing from 30 down to a stop here, paying attention. Transmission feels fine. It doesn't lurch. It doesn't miss gears. It doesn't grind. Synchronizer failure, it does happen on these. It's not super common. Taking off from a stop here. There's a slight little bit of sluggishness first to second in the transmission, but that's pretty common, and that's not going to affect the safety or reliability of it. A lot of times when the clutches start getting some miles on them, 20, 30,000 since the last clutch job at least, you may notice a little sluggishness when it's cold out, so don't be too alarmed by that. And once again, a little bit of shudder from a stop is not the end of the world. They all do that. Unless it's severe and shakes the whole car and makes you feel uncomfortable, I mean, I wouldn't be too worried. And obviously I've got videos on how to replace the clutch yourself in the driveway and the forks, and you'll be spending less than $1,000 on parts and make the car perfect. So if you like the car otherwise, don't freak out if the transmission's shuddering or anything like that. So just use it as a negotiation tactic. Like if you get a car with 200,000 on it like this, a Focus, and it needs a clutch job, I mean, you could offer $1,000 if you really like the car and it's in great shape, maybe $1,500. But I wouldn't pay more than a few grand, obviously. Slowing down here. One other thing you can do is peek underneath the front of the car. If they don't have the fabric panel, you'll be able to get a better look at underneath the engine. There's a fabric service panel that comes from the factory on these. Most of the time when they get a lot of miles on them like this, they've been missing for a while already, so that would be good for you. You can glance underneath, look for any leaks coming from in between the engine and transmission. If you see like dark fluid build up and dripping out of the bell housing, then it'll need a clutch job with the seals and forks. Or an engine oil pan reseal, so it'll need some more regardless. If there's oil leaking from in between the engine and transmission actively, then it's contaminated the clutch and it'll probably need a clutch as well. So, but if you see engine oil dripping from the front of the engine where the belts are, just a little bit, or if it's damp even too, it's not the end of the world. Most of these seep a little bit of oil from the timing cover, and I've never seen one lose enough to cause engine damage or even the oil light to come on, so not a big deal there. A lot of times 40 miles an hour, I'm sorry for the lighting here, 40 miles an hour in general is a good speed to listen for noisy wheel bearings or roaring or of any kind in the transmission. If an output shaft bearing's noisy, you may hear it more at these type of speeds, and you can turn the air down a little bit to hear it a little better. The output shaft bearing on my Focus made most of the noise around this speed once it hit fifth gear, you know. But overall, everything feels perfect in this car. I am a little concerned about the back cab corner where they put that sort of cover on it, and I see some rusting around it. That's kind of got me a little concerned for the coworker who bought this car, but it's not the end of the world. I'm going to look at it closer. But overall, I don't want to get this video too crazy long. With Focuses, a lot of it is just obvious things when you're driving it. Just make sure there's no rust if it's high miles or if it's from up north. But yeah, just drive it, listen for roaring. Could be a transmission bearing, could be a wheel bearing. Pay attention for missing gears, transmission fault warnings, heavy shudder from a stop. Negotiate the price from there. And overall, the engines on these last forever. You have to be pretty clueless. That's not the right word. You have to really try to kill one of these engines. You have to be really neglectful with it. And I generally don't see many steering and suspension issues. If you're at low speeds and you're turning and you hear rubbing and popping, that could just be the strut mounts up front. That's fairly common. That's about the only suspension issue I see on these. So that about covers it. The engine, transmission, suspension, steering, inspecting for rust, checking the tires, and any obvious noises and common issues. Yeah, I covered everything I want to talk about. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll usually reply within an hour. And if you're looking to buy a Focus, I'm happy to help. So thank you very much. Good luck to you. Have a great day, and I hope this video helps.